So first thing, it's the beginning of the year, so you can set out some new goals. This is a time when you really want to decide that you want to see what you want to do with your art. Likewise with me, I find that I want to become an artist when I grow up. That's always been my goal, is to be an artist. And I have been teaching for 40 years. And in that time, the art market has changed quite a bit. In fact, if you look at my early years when I was 18 and 19, I was selling my paintings for $20,000 to $25,000 a piece. Now, they were pretty large pieces, but at that time, there were a few artists and a lot of money. This is prior to right around the Reagan years. Reagan came in and closed a lot of the loopholes for wealthy people to invest in art, and consequently the art market just went dead. But the competition was such that you still could sell artwork for a fairly good amount. With the invention of the new market, because it got really fragmented over years, and in the early days the galleries would actually market your work. You'd find a gallery. In fact, galleries, at one time I actually had a stipend where they would pay me to produce paintings. I mean, can you imagine a gallery actually paying artists to put paintings in the galleries for them? And you probably remember back in the 80s, you had to go to Carmel. The place was loaded with galleries, and those wouldn't have existed if it weren't people for actually buying them. And the only way that collectors could get artwork from artists was to actually go to a gallery, because they had no other way of getting a hold of artists. So in the process of the invention of the internet, the artists started to market themselves. There were a lot more artists that saw, hey, I could do that too. They sat and watched Rob Ross and saw how much fun it was to paint little happy clouds. And they signed up for classes and they were motivated. And then the internet comes and there you see more happy artists out there. The Grand View comes on and I'm out there painting outdoors. I was like the first artist that actually took a camera outdoors and painted in the national parks. When we started our television show, the cameras were this big. And so our first 2 episodes, we had to hire a crew just to carry the cameras on location. Now you can produce a television show with a camera about this size. So now a lot of artists are out there doing it. But I have the pleasure of saying I was actually the first. So that's how green everything was. A lot of people started painting. A lot of people started showing. A lot of people started sharing. The issue is a lot of people were just interested in painting for themselves, and they would sell paintings for $300, $200. You had little art shows, and everybody would have their paintings up on the walls, and everybody was selling their works for fairly reasonable amounts, which all of a sudden had people look at professional paintings like myself, and they'd go, well, I could buy something similar like that on the internet for maybe $2,000 instead of $20,000. So, you know, it's really hard to compete with all that. Not to mention, back in the olden days, galleries would market you. So if you wanted to become an artist, all you had to do was find a gallery. And then these galleries, like Trailside Galleries and Legacy Galleries, these galleries would put money into your career, because there was a lot of money coming in. So you would sign up with a gallery, and the initial thing that they would do was they would put your paintings back behind the restroom. And if people go into the restroom would stop by and say, hey, I really like this painting, I wanted to buy it, and you proved yourself sellable, especially in the back room next to the bathroom, they'd move you out into the front and would see how your painting started to move. And if they moved, the gallery was like, we got a winner. And then they would start doing brochures, advertisements. They'd do all of the things that artists hate to do. Put up the marketing statements, artist statements. They would tell artists, we don't want you to do this kind of painting, that kind of painting, stick with this. They would advertise you in Southwest Art of the West. If you wanted a cover, they would negotiate a cover. Oftentimes the artist didn't have to pay for any of the advertisement. any of the brochures, and the galleries would actually have art shows for you. I mean, imagine that. They actually marketed. And they could afford to do that because they didn't have their stock. They didn't have to pay for the paintings in the room unless they're paying me, like me, with a stipend. But a lot of this stuff was free to hang. And I hear a lot of times art galleries go, well, we have overhead. We need 50%. And back then they were only getting 20% and 30%. And then they would even reimburse the frame. So they would reimburse you the $300–400 for your frame. And then you would split the proceeds. Now it's a matter of no negotiations. They take half. Some galleries take 60%. They don't do anything. They claim they have like overhead. But the dress shop next door has overhead too. And everything that's in their shop they have to buy. And if it doesn't sell, they have to put it on sale. And if that doesn't sell, they have to try to figure out how to get rid of their inventory. Galleries just call you up and say, hey, pick up your paintings. And if the frames are damaged or anything, that's tough. So it's a different climate. They don't have the same want. And they can do that primarily because there's so many artists now wanting to get into the galleries.
So we have good art teachers.
There's a lot of good art teachers out there. And I signed up for a program sponsored by Eric Rhodes, Art Marketing in a Box. And I went on, they have a closed Facebook thing. And I introduced myself last week and I said, I'm Stefan Baumann. You might know me from the PBS television show and my YouTube videos and all this stuff. And to kind of give them the history of art for the last few years and how fragmented it is right now. And one of the gals bounced back, who's in our program, bounced back and said, well, that's just encouraging for us because we think you're already a branded artist and you know, why are you taking this marketing program if you're already a famous artist and you're branded? And I thought that was kind of interesting because she thought I gave the illusion that I am really branded, and I am, but I'm branded primarily a lot with students. So, you know, big collectors are not looking at YouTube to find out how to paint to find me, and they're not watching PBS to find me. So I'm actually trying to get back into a market that even for me can be kind of scary and kind of so fragmented. It's like, where do you start? And with me, the first start was to actually invest in the marketing program. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I kind of want my students to take on a little of that. Now, some of you are painting and painting well. Actually, really, really well. My other classes in the last couple of months, I've been encouraging them to enter art shows. And I've hit a lot of resistance. But there are a lot of art shows out there that are easily found. And all you have to do is put in call for artists on Google. And there'll be lists of shows that will come up. Now the reason why I am taking 2017 and making it a year that not only myself lived the dream that I've always wanted to be when I grew up, and that is to be an artist, but I want my students to start thinking that way. Now, a lot of my students the last couple of months have actually entered art shows. And what's really surprising is that they've gotten in. And some of them have won blue ribbons. And a lot of these artists that are winning blue ribbons are competing with artists all across the country. Because they know, because they watch, you know, what we're doing in classes, and they're applying those things, those magic things that we talk about, and they're beating the competition and they're winning. But what's interesting to see the kickstart that does for people. One of the things that I always say in my classes is, why write a book if nobody's going to read it? Why write music if no one's going to sing it? You know, the activity of that. Art is communication. It's about sharing. And we all as human beings want to be validated. So I can stand up here and go, this is the best thing ever. I love it. I mean, I really do. It's awesome. But you know, in the back of your head you say, well, you say that to everybody. But I do say that to everybody because everybody in my classes does really fabulous work. So it's kind of hard not to beat that. But out of this classroom, how did this work stand up? And it does. It looks really good. The students that are producing and going into shows are producing and selling. And selling on the higher level of you know, what they would be selling their artwork for. So it does work. But what's interesting is the kickstart that they are at. Because of the momentum that they caused, it starts to make you get a little bit more excited about your painting. It has you kind of think and peek over the fence going, yeah, but what if? Remember we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. But what if? You know, what would you add to a painting to make it better? But what if actually you started putting paintings in a show? And what if actually people started to react from them? Don't you think that would have a considerable impact on how you would paint? I think some of you get bored with painting because you don't have an audience. And it's been my history with a lot of students that they go home and their husbands don't even really care. I'll go, oh my God, remember that really pretty painting that we did last week? What did your husband say? And they go, my husband never even bothers taking the paints out of the car for me. You know, I usually just, it goes from my trunk to my wall in the garage, my stack of paintings. And I said, well, how does that make you feel? And she says, well, kind of unvalidated. You know, like everybody else's things are important, but mine aren't. Well, what a difference would it make if all of a sudden, instead of putting that painting in the garage, if she actually put it into a competition and actually got into a competition, and how much better it actually got in as an honorable mention or the best of show. All of a sudden now this painting or this hobby that somebody's working on actually becomes validated. I mean, it actually is worth doing. And you think, and their husbands might have a totally different idea of what their wives' work would be. So I think it's really important that we consider at this point entering into shows. So my request is for all of you to go onto Google, put in call for artists, and just pick 3 shows this year. It's the beginning of the year, can't hurt. Some of the entry fees are fairly inexpensive. And what I would request is that you choose 2 smaller shows and go for 1 big show. So there's some shows like the Autry Museum show or the National Wildlife show or Arts for the Park show, the big shows. And enter. And enter the same painting. You know, if you get accepted to 2 shows, then decide which one's better for you and drop the other one. I mean, it's all about your career. Not only that, you need those shows in your bio. You need to show that you're showing your work. And one of the things that if you look at your applications, is that they'll want a list of things that you participated in, different shows. Part of your bio will be that part of your bio we may need to work on. If we come across something as in a group and somebody says, oh, I need to write a bio, we'll have a discussion about that. This is probably the best place that you could probably take on doing a show. And what I was really surprised by, every painting that got into the shows were all the homework assignments that I give out. Every painting. In fact, there's a show right now in Reading. First place, burger and fries. Remember the burger and fries painting? Burger and fries. One of my phone coaches in Nebraska, North Carolina, I forget where she's at. She did the donut painting. She submitted it into that show. It's hanging in, it got accepted into there. All of the paintings that the students entered that were the homework assignments, all of them got into the show. And half of those got ribbons. So if you wonder what your paintings would look like going into a show, just take on doing the homework assignment a little edgier. And this is my point that I'm trying to get to at this point. A lot of people take on the homework assignments as if it's something that they have to do. And they just want to do it well enough so that when they put it up here, they're not feeling uncomfortable. You know, make sure he's got lights and shadows in there. You know, he won't notice, he won't care so much. It's like, yeah. But if we look at 2017 at this point and we actually think, hey, we're going to enter a couple of these shows, and then I give you some homework assignments, think about painting those paintings and think about them going into the show. Not only just for here, but play big. Because I know most of you probably, when you were 4 and 5, if somebody asked you what you wanted to be as an artist, I mean, what you wanted to be when you grew up, some of you probably said, I'd like to be an artist, or you thought it. Probably scared to death if mom found out about it, but you know, it's like, what's there not appealing? I mean, you got to sleep in, stay late, get drunk, have lots of crazy interludes. You got to dress funny. Nobody questions the artist, right? Cut off your ear if you like. Hang out in dance halls and brothels. A lot of those artists died of syphilis. I mean, you know, who wouldn't want to be an artist? Yeah. You know, what I'm saying is enter a show that there's only 50 or 100 people that are accepted. And you don't know what's going in, but trying to get accepted out of 500 artists, that really causes you, especially when you're turned down, that causes you, okay, what's missing? What didn't I get right? This is such a good painting. What are they thinking? And oftentimes it's a judge, so you shouldn't feel bad about that. But it makes you think, next time I'm going to do a homework assignment, I'm going to work a little harder on it. The whole point is that I want to elevate this classroom work to be like your life depended on it a little bit. If you knew that in June you're going to have an art show that you're going to submit your artwork into, the homework assignments are all probable paintings that will be submitted into that show. And you're going to work a little harder to make sure that the cast shadow is correct, that your temperatures and transitions are correct, and just play out there. I mean, my students are tickled to death when they get into a show. They go, I never thought I was that good. And here they are, they're actually like winning. And they have no idea what the competition is. But they know that they didn't sleep with the judge or pay them anything. And all of a sudden they got, you know, there is kind of, you know, I tried early on to try to get in Arts for the Parks. And I got rejected and rejected and rejected. And I mean, I'm a national park painter. And I would go to, and see, this is the thing. You learn stuff about things when you step out of your comfort zone. You learn things. So I finally went to the judge at one of these Arts for the Parks and I go, what is it? I mean, look, this is the grand Yosemite scene here from the Wawona Tunnel. It's like, why wouldn't you want this painting in this show? Especially compared to all the junk you chose. It wasn't junk, but it wasn't the Wawona Tunnel, Yosemite Valley at sunrise, you know? And they said, you know, those big pictures like that are on every postcard. And so what you have is a glorified postcard. And we're not looking for that. We're looking for the intimate corner, the things that people are missing. Because when people come to the national parks, we want them to know that there's more than just postcards. We want them to see the little creeks and rivers and the bridges, the corners of buildings and stuff. I had never thought about that stuff. I thought everything had to be big and grand like Bierstadt. So I started painting intimate corners and things out of my work with that one competition, and it changed everything I did about my painting. You just got that one little insight, and it didn't come from me, it came from someone else. You know, so there is opportunity of growth to sharpen your edges, to share, because I'll tell you, when you get a first place at an art show, you get bragging rights. I mean, and you go down Facebook, some of you have artists, and they go, guess what, I just got accepted into a show. And then you say, oh my God, I won that show. So you get 2 Facebook posts where everybody goes thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, because 90% of the artists that are out there, and there are a lot of artists, don't do anything. Even with Eric's program, and when I do the plein air conference, Eric said an interesting thing. He said, there were 900 artists in the room, and somebody stood up and said, well, if all of a sudden all of us do what you're doing, the entire art market's going to be flooded. And Eric looked at him and said, I can talk to 900 artists and know that 90% of you are not going to do anything. In fact, out of all of those artists, there were 300 or 400 artists that slept in because they're not interested in marketing their work at all. These people who showed up were interested in listening to the conversation, but do you think one of them was taking notes, or one of them would make an action plan to go into a gallery or a show? He says out of the 10% that's left, maybe 8% will actually try one thing and not get a result. So out of 900 people, you may have 2 or 3% of those people that actually will listen and actually take the coaching. So out of 900 people, you're only having 2 or 3 artists, 1 and 1/2 artists. I don't know what's 3% or 2% of 1,000 is a couple of artists that are actually going to take this on. And that's not really extraordinary. And I'm like looking at the marketing in the box, and I'm like looking at what everybody's doing. And I see them paying a lot of money for these programs, but it doesn't do any good sitting in a box. You actually have to apply it. And if we decided to do shows, we'd have to apply it. So I'm requesting that all of you in the next 2 weeks think about 3 shows. Just put them in. And it's easy to kind of choose which ones you want, because some of them are for women only. And you could go, well, I can enter that. I've got the parts for being a woman. I can go paint. Some of them are artists over 60. You go, well, I can enter that one too. You know, some of the bars are really defined. Other ones are a little more professional. Think about entering bigger shows. Because you know, with the really bigger shows, there's so many artists that are intimidated about even entering that they let a lot of other people in because there's not enough paintings. So you might be really surprised, and I'll tell you, if you can get into one of those shows, you're playing at a whole different level. I mean, that's how you're going to increase the quality of your work. And you guys are all phenomenal artists. It's just, as a coach, how do I make you better? What's the next thing I can put in that will change your life? So what I'm requesting is you guys to play around with me a little bit. Now, as I'm growing with this program and doing the things, and part of it is being consistent, I'm going to share with you guys. And if any of you want to actually go into doing some marketing, I'll give you some coaching on it. I'm not going to give you Eric's program, because that's Eric's program. But I'll give you some coaching on what to do and what to look for, and do that. And we can kind of grow it together. And it'd be kind of nice if some of you do enter to share that. Say, hey, I entered into this show. I put a couple of paintings into that show. Even if you signed up for the Sunnyvale show, if you think that that's, sign up with the group for the Sunnyvale group. If you feel like that you need to take a baby step, then take a baby step. Because even showing your work to 10 people or 15 people, or even just to the other artist, is better than having them sitting in the garage.